go ahead and get some levels started back real quick. I'll start with you, Ron. Can I get a count back from 5 for you, please?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome, sounding great. And Ed, can I please get a count back from 5 for you?
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Awesome, sounding great. Mark, how are we doing today?
Good. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Mark, you're coming in clear, just to sound a little distant on my end. Are you using an external microphone or just the one on your device?
I think it's my camera microphone. So,
All right. Are you able to get just a little bit closer to it?
Yeah.
Is that better?
Let's see if we can get another count back for you, please.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
All right. Are you able to go into your Zoom audio settings and just turn up your microphone input for me a little bit?
Sure, I can do that.
It'll be there at the bottom left of your screen.
Microphone, input volume level,
Make sure automatically adjust is off, Mark.
automatically adjust is off. Thank you for that advice. Let's see how that is. Is that better?
Let me get another count back for you, please.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh, that sounds much better there. Yeah. It still sounds a little roomy. Just make sure you're just speaking directly towards your computer and projecting for me.
Okay.
We have about a minute and a half here until showtime.
All right. And Mark, we are streaming, and it looks like, unfortunately, you were in a hotel room. Is that right?
I am. Yep.
Ron and I were hoping you were going to be home.
Yeah.
With something in the green egg.
Yeah. And a bottle of wine.
The green egg is gathering dust currently.
Is it?
Yeah, it's been a while.
Is there something new you like better?
No, it's just I've been home. Most weeks have been home, return on a Friday, leave on a Sunday.
Mm,
So that one Saturday cooking isn't my highest priority.
sure.
Doing laundry is actually.
Gentlemen, I'm going to dip into the background. Mark, it's great to see you / meet you, and I couldn't make this up if I tried. I'm using my big green egg tonight to cook dinner for a partner at Reuben Brown. She's coming in from St. Louis to spend the weekend with us. So I'm cooking for a CPA on my big green egg this weekend.
That is fantastic.
Anyway, have a great show.
Thanks, Greg.
Too funny. And just Mark, as you know, we do 4 segments. We trade off, so we're not ganging up on you. Although you're a special case, I think if you say something and one of us might test to just jump in if the other one's talking, just so you're aware.
Yeah, no worries.
You're counted.
Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do it.
Have a great show. Going in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Welcome to the Soul of Enterprise Business and the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. I'm Ron Baker, along with my good friend and Threshold colleague, Ed Kless. On today's show, folks, one of our own, our second interview with Mark Koziel. Hey, Ed, how's it going?
It's going great. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. I have to say, it just feels weird that Mark is the head of the AICPA, but that's why I called it one of our own. It's like it's a weird thing. It's very great. Don't get me wrong, but
I agree. Well, like as if Mark needs an introduction, but he is the president and CEO of the Association of International Certified Professional Accountants and the American Institute of CPAs as of January 2025. Prior to this role, he served as president and CEO of Allinial Global, an association of independent accounting advisory firms. He brings over 25 years of experience in accounting and leadership, has been a consistent advocate for the profession, bringing a global perspective to the evolving landscape of accounting and finance. Mark, welcome back to the Soul of Enterprise.
Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ed. It's great to see you guys as always.
Wow. I knew when I met you way back in Buffalo when you did the Young CPA, I think you took me to the place that has the famous buffalo wings. And I said, Mark, someday you're going to be the president of the AICPA. And here you are. I mean, it's just amazing.
Ron, you willed it. That's great.
So, Mark, are you running a profession, a business, a bureaucracy, or a burnout factory?
It sounds like all 4 at some point. Depending on which part of it we're talking about. I am excited. I'm optimistic. I keep talking about as a profession, we just need to show up and be more positive about who we are. It is the greatest profession in the world, continues to be. And I just think that there's so much opportunity. But at times we, as a profession, have to kind of realize how special we can be and understand and appreciate what we've come from, what we've become, and what we can be into the future. So that's really been the biggest part for me.
Well, the most exciting thing about having you at the lead, Mark, is I think you think big. You don't think small, you think big. And I really like that. I know you've been on, I don't know what to call it, a listening tour. I know you solicit it by, through email. People could email you with things, but you've also probably been out there a lot traveling, listening to colleagues and soliciting feedback from the membership. It reminds me of a book by the former CEO of United Airlines, a guy named Oscar Munoz, and he wrote a book called Turnaround Time, and he went on a listening tour on the same day he became CEO, and he was talking to a flight attendant, and she said to him, "Oscar, I'm just tired of always having to say I'm sorry," because United's services kind of slip. I'm curious what insights you've gained from listening to so many of the members.
Yeah, it's been interesting because there's been a variety of ways that we've been able to get it in. And then you also have kind of the US version of it, CPA and the CGMAs that are here, but then you also have the global version of it with CGMA. So I'll just focus this primarily on US. But first and foremost, don't forget about the small firm issues, small firm standards, over standardization, all of those pieces kind of lumped in there. One that was surprising to me was the lack of support for state and local governments, and the fact that like we're losing auditors in that space, and a lot of it is because it's just so painful, right? Because a lot of the state and local governments don't have the support that they need. So creating a sense of community definitely was another one. That people want to feel like they're home in some way inside of the profession. And so all of those pieces really have been kind of the strongest three for me coming out of it. I've talked to the team internally, and what's interesting is I don't know if we just, branding was in there too. Everybody wants a brand, and the Accountant 2 came out, everybody, so go out and watch it. And there's our movie version of why you should be a CPA. You could go out and kill people, I guess. It's so there were actual watch parties that actually happened around.
Yeah. I saw that.
But anyway, I think, the small firm perspective, standards we have a lot of standards. We have a lot of regulation, and it's become more complex to be in practice. It's become more complex to be in small business even. So trying to simplify that, and I think we got some ways to do that.
What are some of those ways, Mark? Because that's intriguing to me, because you're right. It's become very complex.
Well, we had this, we created an AICPA. You guys are both familiar with AICPA, Alternative Comprehensive Basis of Accounting, saying we don't have to use GAAP, we can use something else, tax basis. AICPA created FRF for SMEs, a financial reporting framework for SMEs 10, 12 years ago. I was involved in that. And so it's there already. And I think that one of it is underutilized in a lot of ways. We know some firms that have taken strategic advantage of it, and they've promoted it to their client, which is actually given them additional marketing opportunities with the banks that were the banks that they were able to convince it. When that first launched, I had a firm call me and say, we want you to come down and we want you to help talk to the banks with our people we're going to send in there. I said, well, as AICPA, I'm not going to go in there on behalf of the firm and sell it for you, but I would love to be a fly on the wall. So I'd love to go to that meeting of all the banks and just listen to what the bankers were saying. And I thought going in there, all of the community banks would be all over it, saying that that would be a strategic advantage for them. And actually, the opposite became true. It was the larger banks who made local loan decisions up to about 10 million in revenues, Bank of America, SunTrust, all the like at the time, versus the community banks who said, we are so scared of CFPB that we are not deviating from anything that's going to be standardized. And so therefore we're not going to be able to use it. And so it was just great learning for me. And I think great opportunities for people to figure things out. The CFPB's now has been eliminated, so who cares? SARS 27 came out for client accounting services. Just it was approved, I think, in late December. That is to say that if you are doing strictly a cash project for a client, you can follow the consulting standards, not SARS 21. SARS 21 saying you duplicative review, you gotta have all of these standards in place and potentially be subject to peer review, which scared a lot of small firms away. And so I think with that change, incredibly positive to understand what the business, literally, you talk about how insane it can be. Firms were saying in their engagement letters, because in SARS 21 it said, if you are not engaged to prepare a financial statement, you do not have to follow SARS 21. So they would specifically put in their engagement letter, you are not engaging us to provide a financial statement. Well, in our terms, that means a full set of financial statement footnotes, what a proper financial statement package is, not here's a balance sheet and income statement that I just popped out of QuickBooks, right? And
Right.
so, but clients look at this, they don't know what the difference is, and they're saying, well, wait a minute, I thought you are giving us a financial statement. Well, no, we are giving you a financial statement, but we're not really hired to prepare a financial statement. I mean, I'm like, what? And our standards just kind of, and all the Ars committee did a great job with everything. And it just, there was confusion in the marketplace. I think the standards were good, but there was confusion out there, and people wanted to kind of overread what the standards were saying. SARS 27, I think, just cleans that up a bit from where it was before, and eliminates the potential for confusion. Let's put it that way. And I think that's a small firm advantage. I don't want to hear a firm saying, I'm not going to be a CPA firm because I don't want to follow the rules.
Right.
And that's what we're starting to hear. And I think now it's a great opportunity because the CPA, that's our brand. We should be promoting being a CPA.
Right. Mark, switching topics, can we finally say out loud that the 150-hour rule is the accounting profession's version of the emperor has no clothes?
All I can say is the train has left the station, and Bachelor's Plus 2 is being adopted in many states. I worry very much so about mobility right now. We have some issues on that we need to get that cleaned up as quickly as possible. It's interesting because I didn't realize where the 150-hour rule started, but it actually started in 1988 in Florida. Florida passed it on its own, which was an immediate break to mobility. Now, all of a sudden, there were other states that started to talk about it, and here we are now going in the reverse. And I was at a meeting here in New York. New York's introducing legislation, but they're talking about 120 hours. Wouldn't it be great, Rod and Ed, if we could stop talking about hours as being gauge of success, which is why we've said bachelor's plus 2, not 120 hours plus 2. Because what if you got your bachelor's in 90 hours? There's a lot of Southern schools that are actually starting to do that.
Sure.
So let's look at the competency and the level of education that it attains, and then figure it out from there. So 150, master's plus 1, still be in the rule books if people want to follow it that way. The 150 could actually apply for states where you say, okay, you need so many accounting credits. I graduated with an undergrad in history, And now I want to be an accountant. So in those 30 hours, I could get the accounting education credits. I don't have to wait for a master's or do something else fancy, but I could get the credits to be able to sit. Now I only have to do it for a year rather than for 2 years.
And Mark, the 150-hour rule, I never did like it. And it just, I'm glad that we're seeing states get rid of it. But what bothers me more is losing CPAs in the middle of the funnel, not just at the top coming in. And the business model, this business model that no one loves. And I've heard you say on other shows that you think before a firm can change its business model, they need to change the governance model. And when I think about that intellectually, I agree with you if we're talking big firms, but I gently push back on you if we're talking smaller firms. And I just don't mean, sole props. I mean, even up to 5, 10 partners, because we've seen it happen. We've seen these firms change their business model without necessarily redoing their governance model. But give me your best argument for that, because I know you think about this deeply.
I do. And I think it all depends on what you want to be when you grow up, right? So if you want to stay the 5-partner firm, one of the things that you have to change is, in fact, part of the governance change is how we pay out at the end of term, right?
Sure.
So, telling the next potential partner, congratulations, you're a new partner. By the way, you owe us $300,000 and you're going to get that plus a little bit more when you decide to retire. And by the way, when you decide to 5 years within retirement, we're having a partner meeting. We say we need to spend $1 million on a new technology. You're saying, wait a minute, my compensation is going to be based on what we do in the last 3 years of income, and I got to keep beating my income of the prior year. So all of this idea of we're going to eat what we kill and we're going to take it all home at the end, we're going to eat it all. We're not going to store anything away. Those are the governance issues that are problematic. And that's this is why these 5-partner firms are selling out, because they don't have the ability to be able to pay that off, and they get worried that the next generation won't be there and the check clearing when they're ready to go.
Right. No, okay. That's making some sense. And I know Ed wants to talk to you more about the business model and also private equity and how that's affecting the profession. Unfortunately, this is flying by, as I knew it would. Folks, if you'd like to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And do check out our Patreon channel where you can become a member and get access to our bonus content. You can do that at patreon.com/TSOE. And now, a word from our sponsors.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Awesome. Good stuff, Mark. We're trying to lob you softballs,
They were all good. All good. Unlike my Blake Oliver interview yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That'll be interesting.
Well, he was embargoed, wasn't he? By the previous administration.
Well, I'm glad you're talking to him. So that's good.
That's true.
That's good.
I've said for years, you got to preach the gospel outside the church. Right?
Absolutely.
So,
Yep.
Totally agree. All right, Jordan, I think we're ready to come back.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back on the Soul of Enterprise with our friend Mark Koziel, head of the AICPA. And Mark, I just want to go back to your listening tour for a second and ask you I'll call it a meta question. On your listening tour, when did you experience good listening? Did somebody listen well to you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I don't know that, I've had mentors that have listened to me the whole way through. And I think, first of all, and it's a quote that I've stolen from Ron, but I always give him credit. Please think with us, not like us, right? And I think, and especially when I see this polarized environment that we're in today, it's just amazing. Our town halls for AICPA get now over 12,000 listeners every other Thursday. And we have, we're giving an update on DC politics and what's happening with the IRS and the like. We had Chuck Reddick on a month or so ago, former IRS commissioner appointed by Trump in his first administration. And you had to see the number of responses to talk about Chuck Reddick being such a liberal. And then the others who were offended by Chuck Reddick being such a conservative. And
Well, then you knew you got it right.
well, that's it. I mean, everybody they only want to hear it in their lens, and everybody wants to be offended. Versus, I big Ted Lasso fan, and it was the Walt Whitman quote that he made incredibly famous. Ted Lasso is, be curious, not judgmental.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is such an important trait for all of us, and always assuming positive intent. So more so, I think it's really through the VeriSage group that made me want to think more and think with others rather than immediately saying I have all the answers.
So on that note, you're obviously extraordinarily busy. You mentioned you're, from a hotel room, you've been going Friday to or Sunday to Friday. How do you go about reclaiming time to think?
Yeah, I think, well, on planes, it's the ultimate to think. And, you both had your fair share of frequent flyer miles. And to me, it's an incredible time. And if I'm flying, 7 hours to London, I have a lot of time to think. And I do shut off and I go a little more manual. And, I have my script notes that I'm jotting down and just getting my thoughts cleared and thinking about different things. So it's an incredible time. And usually it's, twice a week that I have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The damn Wi-Fi now on the plane, they're chasing you down there too.
Typically, I won't turn on my computer. I'll only do it by phone and that way. And more so is if I get a text from my wife, Marianne, or something else, just to have it available. I'll check email and do all that along the way, but it still gives me the opportunity to think. In fact, I did a speech last night, and I've been known to write out my notes, and I just need like word prompts, right, in any speech I ever do. I've been known to kind of scribble my notes on a cocktail napkin from the plane on my way to be able to do it. So it's just great opportunities to have that.
Yeah, just process through those things. And as Ron said, turning back to the business model, and I know you've been asked a lot about private equity in the other interviews that you've done. Hopefully we're going to take a slightly different tact on this. And that is one of the things that we observed with PE is that when they went into car washes, when they went into HVAC, when they went into plumbers, they actually did make changes to the business model. And in all three of those cases, moved people to subscription. We're confounded. When we first heard about the PA movement, we're like, a PE movement, we're like, great, maybe they're going to do this as well. But it seems that most of the PE that they're just doubling down on utilization and realization. And we're like trying to understand like what's going on here. Not all, but some.
Right. That's for sure. And I do feel like, and I've talked to a number of the PE investors too, and they've been kind of hands-off approach-ish in what they're doing. And I do think it'll allow for deeper conversations in the future, but it really has still been CPA-led, CPA firm. And so they've been allowing them to still go on their current measures. I do think there's opportunity for that. There's a couple of firms that I've talked to. I actually had one of the firms that I know well that they actually have been 3-tier pricing their audit engagements. And the first one that they ever did, I was talking to the CEO of the CPA firm, and he was all excited. He said, they took our top tier price. And I looked at him and I said, you know what I'm going to say next? Like, don't tell me I undersold it. I'm like, I just, how fast did they take that top tier price?
Yeah.
But at least it's the trial and error. At least they're trying. And I think that it was incredibly positive, and I do think we'll see more of that. I think that technology investment, AI, they should be natural pushes into us doing this, because if it's not, and we still come back to this hours times rate thing, we're going to be in trouble, because we're going to be giving it all away. And we're investing heavily in technology and the pricing model. I know Ron's not a big cost accountant guy, but now take a look at all your costs that are generally there. Your costs on technology is going up. Yeah, your payroll's coming down a little bit, but you need to offset that. You need to get paid. You need the multiples to stay the way that they are. Every firm is being judged on, a standard of EBITDA. And so what does that do to it if profitability is going to continue to shrink every time you try and still calculate it the old way?
Well, and that's why we've always come to the conclusion that it's not even necessarily the billable hour; it's the timesheets that's the problem. I was involved in a conversation today on LinkedIn with actually they were lawyers, and this one guy has joined a firm. I'm not even going to give out their name because I don't want to promote it. But effectively, what it is this AI agent that you load onto your computer that just observes what you're doing on your computer and then fills out your timesheet for you, based on what you're doing on your computer at any given time. And this guy's response was, because he left the private practice to go into governmental or private because he hated doing his timesheet. And like, it's not doing your timesheet that's the problem. It's the culture of around time that's the issue. And I was just completely blown away by that. It's not just filling out the timesheet.
I love this. I got this award last night, right? For my, and I immediately
It's got a clock. For those of you who are listening,
I shouted out to the crowd. I was like, "Great! Now I get to do a timesheet again because I can track my time." Literally, I said that to the crowd.
But in all seriousness, I did address that point. Is like really that's the underlying problem, right? I mean, at least as we've identified it, is that what you are still thinking as well?
And even in business model in general. So some of the failures I've seen in additional services that we've added to firms. Let's talk about wealth management, or you bring in these technology consultants who none of them are accustomed to the model the way that we've done it. And so, this goes back years for me when we started a wealth management division, and the head of wealth management was being chastised because he wasn't in the office on a Saturday during busy season. I'm like, I hope he's never in the office. He's on a golf course selling investments. That's a very different model.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it really is interesting to see. But that to me, that's the foundational problem. And unless people begin to move off of that, I think we're still going to be in a world of hurt. So, all right. So you mentioned earlier, and I think this is a really important point, that accountants want to have a sense of community, and certainly I think you at the AICPA can be a part of that. But in my view, it would also be local communities too, right? So do you guys work with even state and local chapters on them building sense of community, and just brainstorm with me on ways that accountants can build community among themselves and even among perhaps their customers?
Right. And I think that, VeriSage is a community, right? VeriSage is a community for a long time of common thinkers. And I think very similarly in a lot of ways. At Allinial, we did this, and we had an app to be able to manage communities where they could share resources, they could have meetings, they could get updated on things, they could share work, they could do all these things. And I said that coming back to the AICPA, that was something that was severely missing, whether it's a small firm community that says, okay, I want to deal only with sole practitioners who deal in tax, or I only want to do client accounting services, or you know what? I only do craft breweries. I only do construction companies. There's 1,000 ways that we could slice and dice this. Yes, we plan on talking to the state society. Some states have been better than others, better than us at creating those communities already. But we just want to provide that sense of connection. Could be audit, could be tax, could be SOC reporting, could be the industry, could be the geography. And so we're going to pilot in a couple of the communities that make the most sense. We started, and I should say Tom Hood specifically started a finance of the future, where he has CFOs from some of the largest companies in the country getting together, about 25 to 40 of them, and they've become a community in this way. And he was amazed at how much they were missing having that type of community, and how successful it's been in them really kind of advancing the finance function together by being able to do that.
Yeah, I think it's actually related, I think, to a question I asked you earlier, which is time to collectively think, right? To share thinking is such an important thing. It's not just about just the connection, which is certainly there, but it's also about knowledge elicitation, right? What knowledge can we create together?
We're all dealing with the same thing, and everybody talking about AI, and then you just kind of level set because everyone thinks they're so far behind in AI. Then they start talking to others. Misery loves company, and this the same beauty of our firms for all these years. They go to a conference and they're like, "Hey, you know what? Everybody's as screwed up as we are, or actually more screwed up as we are." And so I feel better about it. Now we don't have to change anything when we go.
Right. Well, that's the negative side of benchmarking. Oh, we don't suck as much as I thought we did. Anyway, we're up against our break. Want to remind listeners they can get a hold of Ron or me by sending an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. Of course, the website for the show is The Soul of Enterprise, where you can see show notes as well as previews to upcoming shows. We would love for you, of course, to go out to ratethispodcast.com/TSOE. And guess what? You do there. You rate the podcast. And then that way other people can find the show either through the star rating or preferably the text that you write that helps others find the show. And if you do, we will be sure to read one on a future episode. But right now, a word from our sponsor.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your cannon back.
Awesome.
Good stuff, Mark.
It's always fun.
As always.
Yeah, there's so many topics to talk about. I think spring a new one on you, Mark. I don't know if you've heard of this before, so I want to get your knee-jerk reaction to this. So, and then I might talk to you about PE a little bit more too. Just get your thoughts on the long term of it.
Yeah. Well, the Baker Tilly Moss Adams deal. I mean,
yeah, that's.
They've already said. I mean, they've come out and said, our flip is likely to be IPO.
Wow.
That the market would be limited for them to get bought up by another PE group.
Yeah.
I think Grant's got to be the same way.
Right. Yeah, no, that's fascinating. Yeah, that's. Do you think that's a strategic merger? Baker Tilly and Moss?
Well, the rumor's been out there for a while. I was surprised by it culturally and what it is that they're trying to do. So they're going to continue to push on that middle market. Whether or not they get back into the capital market in a different way will be interesting. They're saying outright we're not competing with the big four. What they aren't saying behind the scenes is, but we are competing like crazy with RSM and BDO. And so we could darn well be of the same size and stature. So,
wow. It just, we did a show on Meister's True Professionalism book, and one of the chapters in there is M&A. And he delineates, I don't know, I think 6 reasons for, doing M&A. And one of them was pins on the map. So you could say I look at some of these mergers and just wonder how strategic they are. Are we just combining 2 dinosaurs and think we're going to get a gazelle? That's my fear.
Yeah, no, I think that's it's valid, but I do think it is pins on the map in a lot of ways and that happened in the mid 2000s, especially with private equity doing so much investing and buying of companies, more so than the capital markets. Firms were losing clients because the PE firm wasn't familiar with them, even though they were super regional, but they were still only a super regional in the Northeast. And yet it was a West Coast PE firm that bought their client and therefore they lost it. And I think a lot of that is what's driven it in the largest of firms.
Right. Okay. All right, Jordan, we're ready.
All right, coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're here with Mark Koziel. And Mark, I want to talk to you about, just on the business model issue that Ed brought up and how some PE firms seem to be doubling down on the measurements. Just like we say, show me your budget and I'll show you your values. Well, show me a firm's dashboard and I'll tell you about its culture. And I just wonder what your take is on, are we destined to live with the timesheet for another 100 years, or is this thing on its way out? Because I'm disgusted by it, and I'm even disgusted by we're still having this debate, especially in the age of AI. What do you think?
No, I do think that overall, we can't keep using that as our ultimate measure of value because just based on all of the changes we're making and how we do it, it's going to be a race to the bottom. And you're going to give away pricing to clients just because we're measuring the value the wrong way. And the clients don't necessarily measure it that way. In fact, what's interesting is I'd say years ago, a CFO with a lack of understanding of value because they came out of a firm, they're our own worst enemy. They come out of a firm, they become CFO of a company. Show me your hours, right? Show me that's the value because that's how I was trained to see value in it. Now boards, audit committees are starting to ask about the innovation. What can you bring to the table that is innovative? What can you tell me about my data that is innovative? And so all of those things have to be measured differently. And that thinking measure that Ed talked about, thinking with them, being able to take that data, analyze it, and provide some semblance of insight to your client, I think becomes the most important. And we can value off of that rather than saying we got your audit done faster.
Right, right. Ed and I are on a kick that it's not about our time, it's about the customer's time. We need to save them time and make them feel like they're investing their time well and that they're getting value out of every interaction with the firm. But on the timesheet and the business model, which I think has a lot to do with what I normally thought or would have said was burnout. I've changed my entire worldview on burnout, Mark. We've been talking about burnout for a long time, and how professionals suffer from depression, alcoholism, divorce at rates anywhere from 2 times, 3 times the general population. But we interviewed a doctor, Dr. Wendy Dean, a while back, and she wrote a book called If I Betray These Words. And she says burnout is a misdiagnosis. We're not suffering from burnout. Professionals are suffering from what is known as moral injury, which is a term that came out of the Vietnam War. It's when you watch somebody transgress deeply held moral values. And in my mind, I think a lot of our colleagues entered the profession to help people. And I don't think you can help people as effectively when you're trying to track every 6 minutes of your day and everybody's measuring the wrong thing and holding you to weird standards. And I know this is an unfair question because maybe you've never heard of this before, but what's your gut reaction to that?
What's interesting to me, when we talk about burnout and we talk about what things look like inside the profession, I do think there is the opportunity for being better at what it is that we do. And so many they'll blame the big four, the largest of firms, or smallest of firms around it. I'm on a small firm practitioner Facebook group, and they're all talking about how bad busy season was and all the things that are going to make it better if we could extend the due dates by certain days and all these wonderful things. Well, to me, most of the burnout is self-inflicted, and there are firms out there that will be an option for many if I'm driven by money, I'm probably going to work incredibly hard and I'm going to work a lot. If I'm driven by family values and being with family, I'm probably going to want to work less. And when I look at those who have left public accounting to go into business and industry, I don't think they're working less hard, if that's such a term, but I do think because I think it's ingrained in them. All of us have been through hard work,
Sure.
pass the exam, to have those first couple of years. Yes, the work is hard, but we don't own hard work. It's
Mm-mm.
every And so a lot of it is self-inflicted. You and I have had conversations my 3 years in political media, politics and public affairs. You can measure busy in dog years in that environment.
Right.
Character. So I do think we have the ability to manage it. People are afraid to at times. I think that helping others, and I have to do all of this for my client, even though my client is a complete PETA and coming in late. And how do we not price? Okay, client, you know what? You're going to get 3 prices. You want it done by the original filing date is going to be the highest price. You want it done close to the extended filing date, it's going to be the second highest price. And if you want it done during the summer on a date that we provide and you must have your stuff in, that's the third highest price. And imagine the behaviors we can have with our client. But yet I'm watching all these folks who are complaining about their clients being so bad. And I just think at times it's self-inflicted behavior. So
Right.
I think there's a lot of opportunities for us to make it different. And why is it that those that complained about the hours, the stress, it was all there 10, 20 years ago, they are now in charge of these firms, and yet it hasn't changed.
Right.
So if it was so bad for them and now they're in charge, fix it. I used to say this to my partners all the time when when we first started our young CPAs that you were referencing earlier. We started with a happy hour, and one of the partners came to me and said, "Should we be worried about our partners or our young CPAs going to this happy hour?" I'm like, "I don't know. You tell me. Is there a problem working here? Because if there is, fix it. You're in charge." We shouldn't be afraid of our people going out into the public and actually talking to people working at other jobs. And if we're actually a lightning rod for talent, then we should want them out there recruiting all the others, right?
Right.
And from then I said, I tell you what, I am going to fix our turnover problem because I know what the number one source of turnover is for us. And he said, well, what are you going to do? I said, we're going to stop sending all of our people to clients. He's like, well, we can't do that. I said, yeah, but that's our number one source of losing people is they go and get hired by a client.
Yeah. That's right.
All of this is, I think as a profession, we could all come together, we could talk about it, and we could try and improve it as best we can, but we got to get around the table and have that. And if the market starts to drive in a way that some firms are standing out differently and others are losing folks to those firms, we're hearing this about PE, the PE environment, there's a lot of turnover now, all these rumors. I don't know if that's fact or fiction. All the firms that are non-PE firms are saying that all these people are leaving, but has it changed any from where it was before? I mean, people are going to move around, and it's a matter of, we can all only focus on our own culture. And if we did that and we created a culture, and I used to say this to our partners, is this firm good enough for your kid? Because I'm recruiting someone else's kid, and chances are we're in Buffalo. I actually know who the parent is that I'm recruiting someone, and I have to look them in the eye and tell them that this is going to be a good career for their kid.
Right. One of the reasons, Mark, this moral injury diagnosis resonated with me so much is because the burnout diagnosis seems to put the blame on the person rather than the system. And I think that it's the system that eats the young, not so much, it's not their problem. And like you said, we're not immune to hard work. I mean, geez, every professional I know is a type A personality who loves hard work. We love that, we're not born to be comfortable. We're born to be challenged. So I just think that's why the moral injury thing resonated with me so much.
Yeah, I do think that that's right. And I think the more we can talk about it, we're having all these pipeline issue discussions, right? How do we improve the pipeline? Well, we improve the pipeline by improving the culture inside the profession, and then all of us telling a better story of who we are as a profession. And, it's like all these surveys about best place to work and best place for moms and best place for dads, and all these things. And yet when you actually are boots on the ground talking to folks and you're hearing that the cultures may not reflect all of those wonderful awards that they're talking about.
Been dying to ask you this question, Mark. If you were designing the accounting profession today from scratch, No legacy models, no rules, no licensure from 1898. What would you do? What would you keep, and what would you gleefully toss on the shredder?
Well, I'd still keep audit around because that is what, and I say this time and again, audit equals trust. Trust equals permission for all these other things that we do. And whether or not I would do audit or not, I would have this semblance of a good practicing firm focusing on only a select number of clients that we all can come in and we can collaborate on all the great things that we're going to do for that particular client. And maybe, independence is looked at differently from there, or the client accounting piece that we do. But, kind of that concierge medicine that you keep talking about is having some concierge level of service for clients and only having to focus on a select few and doing some incredible things and having such a great relationship. I think that's paramount. It's hard and, for serving the public interest and what all that looks like for the public company space. But I think all the other spaces around it, we are Main Street America. We are a huge part of it. PPP proved how much of a trusted advisor we truly are to our clients.
Couldn't agree more. And that we're still and will continue to be a relationship-based business.
Yep. And tariffs are going to follow right along with that right now, depending on how those all flush out. But last Thursday, I'm at our cigar club. I'm talking to the owner of a manufacturing facility. He said he just had a bunch of products that came in, a portion of which are made from steel that was, produced somewhere else. And yet the tariff that came in, he paid an extra 50 grand on a part that only a portion of it was steel. The rest of it was assembled in this other place. And now he's overpaying on the tariff and I see that as the opportunity for our firms now to work with our clients, like cost segregation back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to have to pick apart what is being tariffed, what is appropriate, and making sure our clients are paying no more than what they should be paying on these things.
Absolutely. The uncertainty being created by that is just insane to me. But yeah, we can play a big role. Well, Mark, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for coming back to the Soul of Enterprise and chatting with us about the future of the profession. And folks, I'd like to remind you, if you want to contact me or Ed, send us an email to asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. And now a word from our sponsors, including Woodard.
All clear. Let me know when you're ready for your counting back in.
Mark, are you familiar with there's a Jamie Johnson, who's a country artist. He has a song called "The Dollar."
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I'll send you a link to it, and perhaps I'll put it in the show notes. But I don't want to talk about it on the air. But it's the song is about a little boy who his mom says, "Well, your dad when he goes to work, they pay him for his time."
Yeah.
Right. So the young boy, he runs to his piggy bank, comes back and with a quarter and 4 dimes and says, "How much time will this buy me? Is it enough to take me fishing in a tent down by the stream?" Right. And I have played this at events and people have wept openly.
Yeah. It's a brutal song. It's a brutal song for a timesheet culture.
For a timesheet. I mean, I've had people had to leave the room.
I'll check it out. I always like using it to set a tone for something.
Yeah. Yeah. It's extraordinary powerful.
When I dialed into the AICPA council meeting in the fall, I was in Singapore, and I told the AV guys, as I finished, I said, I'm coming home to AICPA. So I told them I said on the lead out, because I'm going to speak and then they're going to a break. I said, I want you to play Ozzy Osbourne, Mama, I'm Coming Home.
Nice.
You might have taught me on music too. The music, remember the music with the quotes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, bring us back, Jordan. Otherwise, we'll just spend the next 15 minutes talking.
All right. Coming back in 5, 4, 3, 2.
And we are back for our last segment with Mark Koziel from the AICPA. Mark, turning attention to AI and a couple of specifics, just want to share with you one thing that I saw and another thing that I thought about. And if I've thought about it, it means it's already exists. I found I'm very much behind the innovation curve when it comes to like potential products. Somebody's already done it. But the first one is someone going up to one of these places where you can get CPE on the web, where you have to like download this 600-page PDF file. And then you got to take a 35-question test in order to, get your CPE. Well, here was the demo. Download PDF, upload it into ChatGPT, take the exam, answer the 35 questions. I now get 8 hours of CPE in 8 minutes. Aside from the ethical problem, which is clear, right? This is, I think, a real challenge when we think about things, even in terms of hours. What is your suggestion for even breaking the cycle of CPE with hours?
And, it's interesting because when AICPA and NASDAQ first introduced proposed language to the Uniform Accountancy Act to go to bachelor's plus 2, there was an element of competency assessment that they put into the original proposal, and the profession wasn't ready for it. And that was like the one sticky point. So then they adjusted. They said that they're going to do a study on competencies down the road. I think ultimately that's it. Do we care about the input of, and I could read the darn thing for 8 hours. If it's on rocket science, I don't know at the end of 8 hours if I can say that I'm compliant and that CPE is going to help me build a rocket.
Mm-hmm.
But, do I have the competency coming out of it? It's not the 35 questions. It's not the input of the 8 hours to read it, download it, all that. Where are my competency levels? And each one of us are going to be different. Can we do some level of a competency assessment so that your learning could be different from my learning, and it's enough to be able to develop where we want it to be? Why we wanted competencies built into the whole licensing system. And the firms, I think, some of it from a liability perspective to say it, but I think continuing education is the same thing. We've got to get over it that, it's that the ethics requirement, so many of these states that you have to take an ethics course, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, whatever it is. And yet they're going to regurgitate the same ethics course that I took last year. I'm taking again this year. I could just about recite it rather than having to read it again for 2 or 4 hours. Right. But, these are all the compliance pieces that I think that we really need to challenge ourselves going forward.
Yeah, I mean, and that will continue to meet resistance, Mark, that you're going to get pushback because every profession has had to deal with that. And, if you're truly a professional, don't you want to increase your competency? I mean, I just don't understand the pushback on it anyway. All right, let's move off of that. Another AI, and this is the idea I had. So that's why I know that this exists, because it's got to be. I get all my stuff at the end of the year, Mark. I get my W-2, I get my 1099s from my 401k and all of this stuff. There's got to be a ChatGPT thing where I just drop and drag all my PDF files that I have up there and say, produce a tax return for me. Now, what do you think of that? I know that's out there. Somebody's working on it. If it's not out there already, somebody's working on it.
I would imagine somebody's working on it already. There is some semblance of that, I guess. And you think about the fact that you could get there close with some of the technologies that are there now, because the only difference is right now they're saying, do you have any W-2s? Yes. Where are they? They're at Paychecks, they're at ADP, they're at
right.
Okay, well, link us up and then we'll drop it in there. Not only just from the PDF perspective, but because they have that connectivity and the open API to be able to do it. A lot of the firms have created their own portals to be able to make it happen, and then they dump and play into it. So I think we're pretty darn close to that now. It's just that next iteration, and I don't know that it's AI necessarily on its own, but yeah, I mean, and ultimately, let's just keep saying it. Our value is not numbers and boxes. So what? It's still going to be the production of that return. We have access to that AI. It's not like, some other company is going to offer that AI to the general public, and the general public's just going to say, okay, I'm going to be able to do it. because there is no way for the general public to understand whether or not they got it right.
Mm-hmm.
So you're making an awful lot of chances, and what else is missed? There are questions in there, so you think you've put all the right documents in there, but what if you're missing something? And what happens when you get the amended 1099 that wasn't in there, and how you're going to make that change, the adjustment? There's just so many nuances to it to say outright that the general public are going to be able to file their own return on AI. I don't think is as accurate as firms leveraging the AI inside their tool and being able to still produce something valuable for their client.
So how about something a little bit more controversial? I asked just before we got on the air here, I asked ChatGPT 4.0, have you taken the CPA exam in any states? And if so, did you pass? It told me I haven't taken the CPA exam myself. I don't have a body to sit for exams. So that's a good good response. But I said, no, I want to know if you think you could pass if you were given it as a prompt. And he said, and ChatGPT said, if he presented me as a prompt, yes, I could likely pass it with a few caveats. He said, here's what I'd be good at: technical accuracy, multiple choice and research questions, and memory and speed. I don't forget the rules, and I don't get tired. Right? Where ChatGPT might struggle: tax-based simulations with spreadsheets or journal entries, exam interface quirks. I would need the exam questions fed to me outside the actual exam environment, and then updated laws and edge case regulations. So that's the three things that it said what might struggle on. His is bottom line: if the CPA were given to me as prompt in conversational format, I could probably score a passing range, probably even ace it. Your reaction?
Yeah, it's like the computer playing against the chess player.
Yeah.
Never ending that we want to see what technology can do against the human.
Well, so that leads to the last question, which is a great book that Ron and I covered, 4 years ago, Ron, maybe longer than that. And the premise of the book is there are certain things that we don't want computers to do. So the question then becomes what is your view in the future for what are the things that the general public, the people are going to want from their CPAs that they don't want to either hear from a computer or allow AI to do?
It's like going to the doctor. Do you really want empathy? Computers can't generate empathy.
Actually, it's pretty good. Ask it to be empathetic. It will be. Sure.
I still don't trust that they're going to take it from a machine. The humans have a hard time taking it from another human.
Right. That's the key. Yeah.
And so people want that still personal contact. We are a human business, and I think that that's going to remain forever. AI is going to help supplement what we do. AI is also going to give us additional opportunities for service lines. Companies are going to want some level of assurance over their AI inside the organization. And if we're relying on AI to provide or produce insights for us in which we're going to make business decisions, we're going to want to make darn sure that what the AI is producing is going to be good information for us to be able to rely on.
Well, sure. And this gets to the thing that I think that AI in every industry profession is struggling with is the AI doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be better than the human.
And it finishes it up, right?
Right, right.
And that's the thing is there's always that last level of connection for the human to validate the information that came in. I had this argument on the CGMA side with SEMA as we were updating our curriculum. They said that AI will do the insights and analysis, and I said, well, wait a minute, no. It'll do it to a point, and then the human needs to finish it and validate it before it goes on to someone to be able to rely on it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, lots of exciting things coming up, Mark, and you're uniquely positioned, shall we say, to have a front seat in all of this. And we really appreciate you on the Soul of Enterprise, and we'll hope you come back on a regular basis to talk to our audience. Really great stuff. Thanks.
I'll tell you what, this was refreshing because this is the first time I didn't have to talk about the IRS, PCOB, or code or
Nah, we will
Oh.
gladly yield that to all other podcasters.
I'm obviously very actively involved in all of that, and it's
Right.
to say the least. But I appreciate the firm focus and the profession focus. So thanks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, Ron, what do we got next week?
Next week, Ed, we have Joe Woodard.
All right. Fantastic for his eighth time on the show.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it. All right. I'll see you in 167 hours.
This has been The Soul of Enterprise, Business and the Transformation Economy, sponsored by Woodard, building your ideal practice with coaching, education, community, and resources. Join us next week, folks, on Friday at noon Pacific time. In the meantime, check us out at thesoulofenterprise.com. We'll have full show notes on our conversation today with Mark, and you can also contact me or Ed at asktsoe@thresholdnow.com. Thanks for listening, folks. Have a great weekend.
All clear, great show.
All right. Take care, Jordan.
Excellent. Thanks,
All right,
Jordan.
Hope you all have a great weekend.
You too. Mark.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks.
That was great.
Thanks for having me. It was fun as always.
Where are you, Mark? Where are you?
I'm in Buffalo, actually.
Oh.
At my university, Council on Accountancy yesterday, and then their banquet last night.
Oh, cool. Cool. How's the
fabulous.
weather there?
Well, actually, it's not bad. It's been like mid 70s.
Oh.
Days, so it's nice.
Very cool. Better than it is here.
And we're heading to
Awesome.
London on tomorrow. Actually, I go to London. I have a board meeting on Monday. So
Are you going back home to North Carolina first or no?
now we're going right over there.
Okay.
Wow. Yeah, you'll be on the road a lot, huh?
I have been, yeah. It's been pretty intense, but yeah, it's fun. I'm having fun with it so far.
Good,
Mhm.
good. Deepa from ASL says hi, by the way.
Oh, nice. I love Deepa.
Yeah, I do too. She's great. I said, by the way, we're having Mark on, and I said, you got any questions for him? And she said, well, I guess that depends on whether you want to challenge him or celebrate him. I said, well, we're going to do both.
Yeah, the Blake Oliver one, it was all about PE, and it was around this idea that the firms are telling their staff not to put CPA on their business card, LinkedIn, all that.
Yeah, I saw that. Is that really a kerfuffle? It seemed like a tempest in a teapot to me, but maybe I just don't appreciate it as a non-CPA. Oh.
Mark, this is nothing new. I mean, when I joined Pete Mitchell in '84, they wouldn't let the managers or the partners put their CPA certificates on the wall.
Yeah.
And you had to look really hard to find certified public accountants. The only place you saw it was on the letterhead when they signed the audit opinion. You look at websites now, the Big Four, it's hard to find CPA anywhere.
They don't talk about it. In fact, somebody had sent Blake Deloitte's policy on use of CPA, and it said you cannot use it on your email signature, business card, or LinkedIn, but we can use it for engagement letters and proposals.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So the firm can use it, but the individual can't. And then we wonder why people aren't keeping their CPA, like you said about the middle pipeline. And the fact that we're just seeing this bleed out of CPA. Well, okay, so you come into the firm, congratulations, you're with the firm, you now have to pass the CPA exam. Okay, congratulations, you passed the CPA exam, now you can't use it.
I can't use it.
Oh, but you better have it, because if you want to make manager, you need
So I'm confused. What's the downside of allowing people to use it then? Like, why?
there's a variety of things. You know what it is, since we're privately talking about this.
Well, no, we're still streaming if you want me to stop that. So,
But it's the lawyers in the firms, and it's the risk officers that tell them, and they're afraid of bumping up against some type of a state board who's going to say, you illegally practiced in our state, and all the mobility issues that go around it. The issue is that it's becoming so fast and furious right now. And especially as we change to the bachelor's plus 2, mobility's broke the day that Ohio signed it into law. And so when we did regional councils and the 4 cities, states were immediately saying these private equity firms are coming into these firms, telling their APS that they can't put CPA on their business card or LinkedIn because they're not a CPA firm. The audit firm can, the APS can't. And so we started this discussion, and one of the council members raised his hand and said, well, wait a minute. He said, I'm in a private equity invested firm. And it was not the PE firm who told us not to do it. It was our lawyers. And the reason they told us is because we have a big Ohio practice and they're afraid we're going to get tripped up. And, you do a tax return for a client and they're in 5 states, you're signing a CPA. What does that mean as you go forward? Now, I think it's really over conservatism of the rules. And I don't know if state boards that'll do it. I would think state boards would encourage people to use CPA to kind of keep an eye on them, no matter what.
Sure.
And I said in that, it's H&R Block is promoting the fact that they have CPAs on staff. How can H&R Block advertise it and talk about it, and yet our firms can't?
The big four don't. Yeah.
And so at the regional council meetings, you guys will love this. I'm like, first time it was mentioned to me, I said, look, here's the thing. I can guarantee I will never pass that exam again. So you can take those 3 letters out of my cold deck because I am carrying them to the grave. And so, I think if we talk about pipeline issues and trying to encourage more to be more positive about the profession, how do people feel about the profession when they can't even say they're a part of it?
Right. No, it's fascinating. It really is. Yeah.
Damn lawyers.
Yeah, well, this is part of my purview. I am getting just before this call, I had a call with one of the private equity groups, and I said to the team, I want to be constantly talking to the private equity firms, and I want to constantly remind them that we are a profession of quality, and that quality needs to be paramount, and so that we could be on the record of having those conversations. Because I'm like, the last thing I want is the next audit failure to come from a PE firm. Getting dragged in front of Congress, like dragged in front of Congress during Enron. Yeah. Right? It's just not a good look for the profession. And so if there's the one thing that keeps me up is audit failure, and it's a PE firm.
Yeah.
Right. And Mark, what PE has done to the medical profession? Man, it doesn't augur well either. The doctors hate it and they resent them.
Yeah, that was the example this PE firm gave to me today and said, we know we have a bad rep because of the medical profession and what PE did in that market. And they're trying to make guarantees that they will not do that here. But I think we need to constantly have that conversation to make sure that they understand who we are and what they need to be. And, I had another PE firm tell me that, or actually the firm bought by the PE firm, that the PE firm told them that there were 2 statistics that they looked at. The risk profile based on the audit clients that they had and cybersecurity. Those were the 2 big things on a go, no-go decision of being a firm. So they don't want to put the firm at risk in audit. At least that's what they're saying now. But there are metrics also that they're putting in. And by the way, the metrics of utilization, Ed, if you actually start talking to these firms, those are not the things measured more so by the PE firm. What they're measuring is margin on a job. Now, there's still that cost aspect.
Right.
Get that about, hours rate and all that they're going to put into that. But they are looking at that we're going to get a 30% or a 40% margin, whatever it is that they have budgeted in it. And the firm is being told that when a partner doesn't hit it on a particular client, the firm's sending the bill.
Wow.
So this goes, I don't know if you've ever seen me do this, but I call it the nuclear option. So I ask everyone in an audience, hey, raise your hand if you've ever filled out a timesheet, and every hand goes up. And then I say, keep your hand up if you didn't put on the timesheet what actually happened like either too many or too few hours. And I usually close my eyes like this. And I say, all right, everyone put your hands down because I know they're all up, right? And then and here's the thing, and this is where it leads into moral injury. I would say that the overwhelming numbers of those are people who do not put hours on the timesheet of stuff that they actually worked. So all you're going to do in that system that you just talked about is create more moral injury, because what people are going to do is, well, I'm not going to put the time down. I'm going to eat it because I'm an idiot.
My first firm, everybody ate time. They had some type of a realization mandate, and everybody hit it, and nobody actually earned it. Right.
Yeah. Like Steve Jobs coming back, and he said every division showed a profit, but the company as a whole was losing $1 billion.
Yeah.
They were fighting over the allocations of the cost accounting. And yeah.
Side note, you talk about testifying in Congress. Did you catch when Tim Cook was testifying and he was asked, what is the profitability of the Apple Store? Did you hear this?
Oh, what did he say?
And I don't know.
Yeah.
We don't put it in a silo.
We're one income statement company, period. We don't have silos, divisions. Yeah. Mark, the Institute of Chartered Accountants, England and Wales, and years ago, they did, over a decade, I believe, they went to CPE that was just self-reported. No hours. Just give us a plan. Tell us what you want to learn, how you're going to learn it, why you want to learn it, and how it's going to advance your career. And our colleagues over there, Paul Kennedy and even Paul O'Byrne, when he was around, said people are doing more CPE than ever, and they do spot audits, but it's all self-reported. And, it seems to work fine. I don't know why we don't adopt something like that.
The rules-based society and NASBA, when I was at Allinial, they're telling me all the ridiculous ways that we're going to track whether or not somebody was there. I'm like, get them in and call it a day. Well, what if they leave early? I'm like, what do I care? Right? And why is it that at an AICPA conference they could do that, but for us, we're doing something different? I'm like, let NASBA come after us. I'm not going to worry about it because this member experience is awful.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's so true.
Check out all that.
Crazy. It's a paper chase. It really is. It's crazy. Check the box. Geez.
All right. So, all right, we'll let you go, Mark. What are you doing tonight? You going out to dinner?
Family here in Buffalo. See everybody, and then heading out tomorrow. So
that's great. Did you speak at your college or a high school thing recently?
I spoke at, I visited with a number of firms here in Buffalo the last 3 days.
Okay.
Right. I saw that. Yeah.
I did a quick speech last night too. So.
Okay. All right. I'm speaking at my high school's first ever leadership conference.
Right.
Yeah. And General Peter Pace is the headliner. The guy who was a chairman of the Joint Steves under, I think it was Clinton and then Bush. Oh, pretty cool.
Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
All right.
Okay.
All right, Mark. Thanks so much.
All right. Thanks.
Have a good trip. Have a good trip.
Sure.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
All right. A little overtime, Greg.
Oh, I'm ready.
You're ready?
Yeah, we're gonna cruise through this one. Today I'm referring to this overtime segment as King of the Segway. I'm going to take you from Mark's award as Accountant of the Year on through to a Catholic organization in Ted Lasso, on through to Ed's opinion and genuine opinion about the Pope's passing. So let's do it.
Wow. Holy smoke. Okay.
For those that were not watching the video, Mark held up an award, and it was lost in the laughter. So I just wanted to reinforce that it was an Accountant of the Year award. It was a plaque, typical plaque, brown plaque, gold lettering, right? But a full one half of the plaque was a clock. That was amazing.
I'm glad he had a sense of humor about it too.
Oh, it was great. It was great. And he referenced Ted Lasso.
Yeah.
One of my favorite shows. Did you know that Ted Lasso is coming back for season 4?
I know. I'm worried about it. I'm worried.
Yep. So the best way I heard this described is Jason Sudeikis, Ted Lasso, and also one of the writers and co-creators of the show, said we wrote a 3-season arc. We produced 3 seasons. That's what we intended to do from the beginning. But then Apple backed a big dump truck of money into his driveway. And when he saw the size of the dump truck, he said, yeah, I'll do a season 4. So in Mark's comments about Ted Lasso, he mentioned the Walt Whitman quote,
Right.
"Be curious, not judgmental." For those that are Ted Lasso fans, that comes from the dart scene when he's playing darts against Rupert Bannion, the sort of the bad guy in the show, right? That quote is Ted Lasso's what gets measured. What is the
When you get measured, get managed. Yeah. When you can measure, you can manage.
Yeah, what gets incorrectly attributed to Drucker. We don't actually know that Whitman said that. It's been popularized because of the show.
Right.
So
that
many
Whitman
times.
said it.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah.
Ed.
Now, because I thought that too when Mark said it. It's like, I don't know if that's really Whitman, but I mean, but you're right. But it was attributed through Lasso to that, since they did it, and they, but I will say this now, Ron, we do have Drucker replace advice with curiosity. Right. That's Drucker. I believe he did actually even say that. Replace advice with curiosity. Or I replaced advice with curiosity. It was an interview with him when they asked him what was your secret sauce, so to speak. And that's what was his response. Now, it might not be as succinct a quote as that, but that's the
spirit.
The spirit of the quote.
Right.
So,
Right. It is funny, Greg, how popular culture can drive people to misattribute a quote. I know the movie that Clint Eastwood did, Alcatraz. In that movie, an old guy says, I've never spent a colder winter than a summer in San Francisco. Mark Twain never said that, but it gets attributed to him.
It's
all
a
the
good
time.
line.
Yeah. It's a great line. He should have said it.
So I did a little bit of research in the background to see if I could find some canonical article that would talk about whether or not this was truly a Whitman quote, and I found the Alliance for Catholic Education. They wrote an article called, quote, "Be curious, not judgmental," end quote, not Walt Whitman. That's the title of the article, right? And they go through to talk about its origin, and of course they've got the Ted Lasso scene, the dart scene, embedded as a YouTube video towards the bottom.
Okay.
So how's this for a segue? Speaking of the Alliance for Catholic Education, and you know where I'm headed with this, but Ed, you got a book off your bookshelf while we were speaking, and you're looking something up, and I want to know what it is. I'm curious, not judgmental.
This is the Bartlett's Familiar Quotations. I have my 1982 American Heritage Dictionary back here. Bartlett's Familiar Quotations. This is another quotations book, which I really love. This is the Respectfully Quoted. This is
a great book.
This is the number 1 book that speech writers in Washington would use for political speeches. And then I also have this is the College Handbook of the Harcourt Brace, 1984 edition, because this is when it was still real. And then, of course, in alignment, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. So go on. I know how they're related, but I'm looking up Curiosity and Bartlett's while you do this. So go ahead.
Yeah. So from the Alliance for Catholic Education, we have a headline that I saw earlier today from the USA Today. The headline was, and this is for those who don't know, Pope Francis. I believe we mostly know that he's passed, but I wouldn't assume that everybody knows it's Pope Francis, right? So the headline is, "The Pope wanted a small funeral. He's getting fighter jets and drone busters." So Pope Francis was famously demure in his desire of things, right? When he became the Pope, he actually didn't live in the most common living quarters for past popes. He's like, well, there's an apartment building right there, and that's fine. That's enough for me. He wanted a wooden casket, which is not something that we've done for popes in a very long time, primarily because of, I believe, in part because of his Jesuit background and stemming from his desire to help those in need and maybe not live too far above the means of those in need, right? But I loved the headline, and I thought it was hilarious. The Pope wanted a small funeral. He's getting fighter jets and drone busters. Right? there's just no slowing the machine. We are going to celebrate the passing of a pope like we always have.
Yeah, he didn't want to be laid in state in the Vatican either, and that happened. So
That happened.
yeah,
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
yeah. But
Did I mention last week? I think I did, right? That my Vatican tour tickets were canceled.
you told me that in a conversation we
Okay.
had on the side. Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah. So yeah, it's always gonna be interesting. You know, the conclave will be starting up probably next week, and see how this goes.
Any predictions, guys?
No idea. Oh, I do know that I think there's 135 cardinal electors that are available, and there's actually one guy who wants in who was convicted of a crime. So we'll have to see if he actually makes it in or not. So 135 or 136, and of those 105 were appointed by Francis.
Wow.
Which is very interesting. And here's the thing. And by the way, Acton Institute was all over this, had a great podcast on this, and there were a couple of other things that I've seen on YouTube. There's a big sense when you hear, well, Francis was a liberal pope.
Yes, they did that.
All right.
Yeah, I listened to that.
Let's not equate, when he says liberal with, he's all in on the entire liberal agenda. And I think that is exactly what the Joy Behars of the world are thinking, is that no, not really.
Not really. He's not pro-choice. Promise you that. Yeah.
So, some really interesting things. So
There needs to be a recognition that this is the Catholic Church.
yeah.
So the word liberal means something a bit different in context.
Yes, it usually means liberal in terms of theology with regard to the Mass is what it means. So it usually means someone who is supportive of potential variations in the and moving away from the Latin Mass, let's say, because that's the bizarre thing. Because Pope Francis was not a big fan of the Latin Mass. In fact, pretty much shut it down worldwide. Pretty much shut the whole thing down. So he wasn't, because he is a liberal in terms of he wants the vernacular. He does not want it to go back to the old Tridentine Mass. So more than you probably wanted to know. Anyway, there was no curiosity quotes referenced in Bartlett's that approximate that. Yeah. So I almost assure you then that it wasn't Walt Whitman, because if it were, it would have been in here.
Yep. Yeah, fascinating how much of an impact that one scene in one TV show has had on that quote and Walt Whitman's name. It was a good quote. It's okay to attribute it to him. I don't think he's complaining. Well,
no,
he can't, obviously, but
he's dead. So.
Yeah. All right, excellent. So that's what I had. And for the one person that wants to know, and in this case it would be Steve Case. Steve has written me a few times about my son's activities in the Boy Scouts. I've got to go bring a bunch of supplies over to the local church where we meet as a troop because my son is set to complete his Eagle Scout project this weekend.
Wow. Very cool.
Yeah. So at that point, he has a little more paperwork to do. There are things in the background, but the really big, heavy lift when you move from the life rank to the Eagle Scout rank is the project. So he'll be completed with his Eagle Scout project this weekend.
Wow. Absolutely fantastic.
What is this project, Greg?
So in his case, he at first wanted to. So the church that we meet at is a Greek Orthodox church. Many churches across the country charter Boy Scout troops, and that's a legal structure that effectively allows the Boy Scout organization to provide us with liability insurance and a couple of other umbrella policies while maintaining a relationship with a formal organization, because us as a troop, we don't have like a 501c3 designation. We're just a troop chartered by this Greek Orthodox Church, famously known in my town as the church where Greek Fest is every year, right? People love that about this church. So on their property, they have about 40 acres. They have an outdoor chapel that's in serious disrepair, but they're also doing a lot of construction work because the church is growing. So at first, my son had proposed that he completely renovate the outdoor chapel because they used to bring kids out there in the summer to hold mass. But unfortunately, their construction plans include demoing the outdoor chapel and moving it to a different location. So they didn't feel that updating it now would be a good use of my son's time. So instead, at the Family Life Center, which is across a small parking lot from the church, there's a rather large handicap access ramp that turns a few times and leads to the Family Life Center. And it's primarily made of wood. It's falling apart. It's not unsafe, but it's bordering on unusable. So we are going to finish this weekend. He is going to finish with his friends, fully renovating it, painting it, and then landscaping around it so it looks a bit nicer.
Oh, wow,
So
that's
he had to
cool.
do a lot of wood replacement. He had to do a lot of mostly planning, right? The whole point of an Eagle Scout project is to teach these boys leadership and planning. So as long as the project fits those goals and is of benefit to the community, it's likely to be an impactful project for the boy and also for the organization. So he's effectively renovating a handicap access ramp to the Family Life Center at the church.
Wow. I went to an Eagle Scout celebration. It was Justin's kid, and his project, he built a fence on a state park property line that had been, deteriorating, and and it was a huge project. So, wow. Yeah, that's really neat.
Yeah.
Plus, that's
Yeah,
a cool ceremony. The Eagle Scout ceremony is really cool.
I had the honor about 3 months ago of emceeing an Eagle Scout ceremony because as the Scoutmaster, one of the boys in the troop had become an Eagle Scout, and it was the first one in the troop since I'd become Scoutmaster. But being the MC was a distinct honor, and it was a lot of fun too. I really enjoyed it, and I had to do some research on what some of the scripts are that people have used in the past. It can be interpreted by anyone. I mean, you can have an Eagle Scout ceremony and invite your immediate family and call it a day, right?
Sure.
Of course, you want to celebrate the accomplishment, right? So I worked in a couple of things that were related to the parents because the father is a high school history teacher, so there was a lot of history in there, and then I also obviously worked in a lot of things about the boy, and it was a great time, and I was very honored to be the MC. Yeah, that's a big deal.
Yeah, and they recognized the mothers too, which I thought was really classy.
Yeah.
They carted them back and forth and all over the place.
Yep.
Yeah. Great example of a transformation.
Yeah,
Oh my
for
goodness.
sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yeah, and there's a program inside of scouting that unfortunately my son cannot go to this summer, but he will go to it next summer. It's called NYLT. This is a pretty common program across the country called New Youth Leadership Training. And it is a 6-day in the woods leadership training program. So it's not so much about camping in the woods because it's scouting. That's the format under which it takes place. And I've got 3 scouts who are going through NYLT, New Youth Leadership Training Program this summer, and then my son will be going through it next summer. I've heard from other parents who have seen their scouts go through it that it is transformational, and I've heard them use that word. They say they come back from this leadership training program with a level of understanding around leadership and planning and group work like nothing they'd seen from their child before. So I'm actually looking more forward to NYLT than I am my son's transition to Eagle Scout, because that took many, many, many years, and I've slowly seen the results, but I probably missed a lot of the outcome because I've been there every step of the way. Whereas with NYLT, he's going to go into the woods for 6 days and come back and be a trained youth leader inside of the scouting program.
Yeah. So interesting though, but different people are affected different ways, and don't be surprised if it doesn't happen, Greg. Like some people just don't respond on short bursts like that. It has to be over time for them. I'm not saying your son is that way. I'm just saying that it's just as I read more and more about transformations, some of them are instantaneous, others of them take years, and it might even be very close to being the same transformation, but just two different people. So
yeah, that's great insight, Ed. Yeah.
Oh, kind of weird. We're humans are weird.
Yeah, and transformations are hard.
Yeah.
That's another theme that's coming through this, have to be sustained and all of that.
Yeah.
Well, if transformations weren't hard, then every company in existence would have adopted the internet in 1994, right?
Right.
Yeah.
True.
Right. Yep.
So,
totally agree.
So I've got a bunch of materials that I need to go drop off at his project, and then get back home and maybe spend a little bit of time with my family, and the two of you have a bonus episode to do.
All right. Sounds good, Greg.
All right, Greg.